Thank you for being here. This is the last session of the day. My name is Terrell. I'm with the Prince William Conservation Alliance. And today I have the pleasure of introducing to you Dr. Janene Cullen. Dr. Cullen has been a Prince William Master Gardener since 2006. She's also an Audubon Ambassador, a Virginia Tree Steward, and a Climate Reality Leader. Janene is currently serving as the president of the Prince William Master Gardeners Board of Directors. In her day job, she is a satellite engineer providing technical advice to the U.S. government. She's a military veteran, having served 21 years in the U.S. Air Force. For now, gardening is a hobby, but she looks forward to the day she can spend many more hours on gardening and climate reality projects. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for staying. I think people bailed. This was sold out, so people were saying they wanted to come, and so there's no room. But thank you all for staying till the bitter end. It is a sold-out symposium, so thanks for staying till the end, getting your money's worth. I really like kind of interactive talks, and I understand the policy today is to wait till the end. But just to encourage, I'm going to show you some of my kind of trial and errors and experiments that I've done to work with the climate change, and I want to hear yours. But to encourage this, do you like this T-shirt? It says "Grow Weed," and then it's got our native milkweed on there. I put this on my Christmas list. Well, 2 people bought it for me, so I really like this shirt, but I don't need 2. So to encourage someone, if whoever contributes the most at the end, you get the same shirt. So I'll hand it out at the end. So again, I don't need 2 of these, but I really like this shirt. So today we're going to talk about too hot, too cold, and the climate change impacts on our native plants. We've all started experiencing it, I am sure. I'm going to talk about a couple examples, the earlier springs and the hotter summers. We'll go into that a little bit here today. I'm going to talk about 3 main things: weather, the climate change impact on weather, climate change impact on pollinators, and climate change impact on our native plants. And I purposely put them in this order because weather and pollinators absolutely have an impact on our native plants. So we'll touch on all these. And here's just a summary kind of right up front, things we already know, kind of already talked about. We're having an earlier spring, a wetter spring towards the end, hotter summer. Fall has kind of been pushed out a couple of weeks. I'll show that. And then our winters. Can they hear me okay? You good? Yeah. Our winter, I saw you looking over at me like you couldn't hear. The winters are absolutely not as cold as they used to be. So in 2023, the USDA put out a new plant hardiness zone. You probably have already seen this. So just a kind of refresher, the zones between 7 and 8 and 8 and 9, they're all like 10-degree chunks. So between 7 and 8 to 10 degrees, 8 and 9, 10 degrees. A and B in between there are 5-degree Fahrenheit chunks. So between 7A up to 7B, 5 degrees difference. Half of the states across the United States flipped a zone. So always in the warmer direction. Nobody got colder, but half of the states across the United States became warmer in a different plant hardiness zone, a hotter one. If you go to this website, you can put your zip code up there and you could kind of zoom into your own area. So I did that. I live in Haymarket. So I put in Haymarket and I kind of zoomed out a little bit to cover all of Manassas. We were in 7A. We are still in 7A as opposed to in 2023. However, remember I told you it was 5-degree difference between A and a B? We changed 4 degrees. And this was 2023. So I suspect we're in 7B. If not in 7B, we're really on the edge of 7B. Virginia's kind of unique. We have 4 of these plant hardiness zones just within Virginia, all the way up somewhere up there. I can't hardly see it on the map, but somewhere in northern Virginia, there's a 5B. And then we go all the way down to 8B near the eastern shore. So again, still officially we're in 7A, but I'm pretty sure we're in 7B. We'll have to wait 8 more years for the USDA puts out another map to officially show us into 7B. So next I'm going to kind of go through a couple charts. Going to be like Bill Nye the Science Guy. I'm going to show you some colorful charts about what is climate change, why is it happening, what are greenhouse gases. So just kind of some of you would be a refresher. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So this is why it's happening. We continue every single day to put up 162 million tons of pollution into our atmosphere. And most of that is directly related to the extraction, processing, and burning of fossil fuels. This is our outer atmosphere. This was taken from the space station. It's a NASA photograph many years ago. But that's our outer atmosphere. That's what protects us, protects the Earth from all the really heat and temperature cycles that most of the other planets in our solar system go through. This is about kind of the degree 2 area is about 100 kilometers up, so about 62 miles up above the surface is that Earth's atmosphere and space layer. If we did not have this, if we didn't have our atmosphere, when we're facing the sun, they said our temperature could get up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. When we're away from the sun, it could be minus 280 degrees Fahrenheit. So without this layer protecting us, we'd go through this. I mean, it's impossible to live as we know it in those kind of conditions. And unfortunately, this is where all that pollution is going up to. So kind of, again, just a history of how this happens. The sun sends energy to the earth in the form of light, and you see that blue shell around the earth there. Most or a lot of that energy is absorbed by the earth. When it hits the earth, it gets radiated back into the form of infrared energy, which is those red lines there. It's heat. You can't see it. It just re-radiates back out to heat. You can see here some of that energy. It hits the outer atmosphere. It comes back into Earth, some of it, which is a good thing. That keeps us like a kind of natural greenhouse kind of environment. Again, just a normal, kind of stable temperature environment, certainly compared to the other satellites in our solar system. But watch that blue line. When we add more pollution into the atmosphere, that blue line effectively gets thicker. So when you see now more of that infrared energy, more of that heat bounces off the outer atmosphere and comes back to Earth. So it cannot escape. So the entire Earth is heating up. And these are probably some of the biggest contributors to the pollution in our atmosphere. Certainly the extraction of fossil fuels, forest burning, transportation, mining, all of these things contributes to putting all this pollution in our atmosphere. Here's some charts from the global surface temperatures over time since 1880. It's certainly showing a trend there. And again, this is just data. This is just measurements.
Is that like an average of the world?
Yes, this is the world. This is the whole globe. Yeah. Yep. And the temperature rise of the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which we just busted last year, is a temperature, the world's temperature. Again, these are charts from NASA and NOAA, and I purposely chose charts from scientific organizations because this is all sensor data. Both NASA and NOAA have sensors in the ocean, they have sensors on the ground, they have sensors airborne, and they have sensors in space. I have actually helped NASA and NOAA get their satellites launched into space for their sensors. So this is all electronic sensor data. And I emphasize that because no human being is taking measurements. So there's no bias, there's no opinion. This is just sensor data. All that data is collected, it's get put to a database. I mean, just think Excel spreadsheet, and then they print out these plots. So it's just data. On the left side there, you see the charts from NASA. And just kind of bring it home to Americans. This is the United States since 1900s, what's happened. And you can see the temperature increases out west. So the 10 hottest years on record have been the past 10 years. Just last month, NASA released the numbers from 2024. Anybody want to guess where it's at? Anybody? Here you go. It's number 1. So next time when I update these charts, it'll be first. So last year we did bust the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is about 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit worldwide temperature. And that was a goal that the United Nations and climate scientists had. Maybe if we can hold it there, it'll come back down, but we just busted through it.
How
Yeah.
did they expect to hold it there if ever since they agreed to hold it there, the amount of CO2 released in the atmosphere has done nothing but increase?
Yeah, so I'll show you a little chart later during the pandemic and then during the global financial crisis. It actually, for a second, you're right. But that shows you that if we stop polluting, the Earth may try to heal itself and may be able to. We just keep dumping it into the atmosphere. So it's humans, it's human beings. We just have to stop polluting and dumping that heat in there. So just to again bring it back to America, last year, some of our cities out west in California, Nevada, set 13 temperatures for an all-time new high, 129 degrees. And I included this in here, not that it's environmental plant related, but the heat, the extra heat that is in our environment is impacting human beings. It's impacting our health also. So again, this is kind of out of place, but wow, can you imagine 70 days, 110 degrees? I mean, you have to sit in your air conditioned house and then run to your car and hope the air conditioning starts up quickly, and then run to your office. You cannot be outside because that's you can't take that physically. That's just amazing to me. So here's the greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide. That's 80%, and again, directly related to the extraction, processing of the ancient fossil fuels in the ground, and then burning them, releasing them to the ground, into the air. Methane is the second one, about 10%. This is also related to the extraction of fossil fuels. You see a lot of commercials now for American natural gas, and there's kids running through parks smiling and people in their house having dinner. You mean what is in natural gas? Methane, 80% methane. So just through the process of digging it out of the ground, transportation, getting it into businesses and homes all around the world, you're going to have leakage. And energy companies, they just burn it. Those flares that you see, and that's methane. They're just burning it. It's cheaper for them to burn it than it is to try to reprocess it. And nitric oxide, and that is primarily related to agricultural kind of practices. All the synthetic chemicals, you see these big ag companies spraying all over their acres and acres of land. That's primarily nitrogen, kind of a derivative of nitrogen, and that vaporizes, and it goes up into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide can be 300 times as potent as carbon dioxide. And as potent, I mean it blocks it, the molecular structure and the way it's connected, it blocks more heat from leaving our atmosphere and re-radiates it back to the ground. So 300 times as potent, and it can last in the Earth's atmosphere for 100 years. So the stuff we're putting up now is going to be up for our kids and grandkids. And here's a chart I was talking about earlier. See those two little dips I said earlier? The global financial crisis, about what, 2005, around there? Eight, there you go, somewhere around there. Just again, a slight pause. And then the global pandemic, I mean, again, it's like a 7% dip or something like that. And again, I would never wish a global pandemic or a financial crisis on anyone, but this shows if we just stop polluting so much, our world can start to try to heal itself and try to get rid of some of those, eventually some of that heat would leave the atmosphere, but we just got to stop dumping it up into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This chart is very interesting. It's again, NASA and NOAA, full scientific organizations. This point is from today. So it's going back 800,000 years. And that's the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And they can measure that by taking core samples at the North and South Pole. They get these really deep core samples and they slice them up. When the snow comes down in the ice pack, you can look at the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So they can tell, and sure, it goes up and down, up and down. People say, yeah, it's changing all the time. Yeah, it is changing all the time. But look what happened around 1950 and what happened in 1950 after that, worldwide. The end of World War II, there was a lot of energy companies, a lot of drilling, a lot of industrial development, a lot of economic development, which is great. And we did not know at the time what we were doing. So I'm not criticizing anybody, anything that happened, but we just started dumping all these fossil fuels, all the emissions up into the air. And then again, trying to bring it kind of home closer to maybe some of our lifetimes. This is my lifetime. I was born in 1960. So just in my lifetime, I mean, look what's happened to the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So some little bit good news. This is United States greenhouse gas emissions, and it has come down a little bit. Can anyone guess why it might be coming down? Efficiencies? Anything else?
What our industry is. Our industry, we de-industrialized. We shifted to China where they're building coal plants.
This is true.
We also switched our electric production from primarily coal and oil to natural gas, which emits half the CO2 per ton. And there has been a change in the general structure, though our population has grown.
Very good. So the number one thing is we closed a lot of coal factories. Coal was the nastiest one for burning fossil fuels. Not only did it emit all the greenhouse gases, it emitted mercury fumes, it emitted lead fumes, particles. I mean, it was really difficult for anyone who lived around a place where you had a coal plant, got a lot of respiratory issues. So it was just the nastiest. So United States has, is that right?
Hospital ran on coal.
Is it closed now?
They closed the coal operations.
Yeah.
What remains is a diesel operation and a natural gas one.
Yeah,
And
but
they're
not as,
expanding that to a gas steam turbine.
yeah,
Because
still
they also
emissions.
just need more power.
Still emissions, but coal, like I say, coal is the nastiest. So, and the second thing that has helped us is Americans, a lot of companies and individuals have switched to renewable fuels. A lot of big corporations, Apple, Google, they have large campuses that are totally off the grid. They're solar powered or wind powered, and individuals in their homes are putting solar panels on their homes to go off the grid. People buying electric vehicles, so that is having a bit of an impact in that. So this was the plan. Keeping with the current policies and how the government was trying to transition away from fossil fuels. Inflation Reduction Act offered a lot of incentives to try to move to renewable energy. But this was an agreement that we made in the 2016 Paris Climate Accord by 2030. However, given the new administration, and they pulled us back out of the Paris Agreement, and they have eliminated all of the incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act, we're even further away from getting close to our target. Yes.
We won't be getting any of the data on climate change.
I know. It's all, I heard that it was all removed from all the government websites. Yeah. Okay, moving on to the climate change impacts on weather and their impacts on our native plants. So just kind of a definition up front, the difference between weather and climate. So weather is what's happening outside your window right now, or possibly the week, like when you listen to the local news. That's your weather. Climate is a change over decades or even centuries. You saw some of my charts with centuries. So again, weather is what's happening outside right now. Climate is over decades. So the fact that it's snowing, it snowed this morning, and I even saw a senator one last year when it was snowing, get a snowball on the house floor and throw it. So there's not climate change because it's snowing outside. So just kind of publicly demonstrating their ignorance of science. So again, climate is over decades, if not centuries. So just a definition. So unfortunately, most of the heat in our atmosphere is being absorbed by our oceans. Water is a great heat sink. Land is not so much. So just for land, to take the example like sand, you go to the beach in the summer, it's really hot during the day, but really cold at night because that land just doesn't hold on to the heat. Water will hold on to heat. Water is a great heat sink. So most of the, again, heat in our environment has gone into our oceans. So here's the changes in the temperatures in land, atmosphere, ice. The ice is melting, so getting the average temperature getting cold. And unfortunately, here's the oceans. Yeah. So look at the first 700 meters. I mean, that's incredible. And side note, this is causing a lot of issues with fish. I mean, a lot of world's population depend on fish as their main animal protein. And people think, well, they're fish, just swim away. They can't swim. They're just like not humans, but other animals. They can't just leave their environment. That's where their food is. That's where their habitat is. That's where they spawn. That's where their shelter is. They just can't swim to another place. There's predators there. They don't have the food there. So it's not that you can't just swim to another place. So there's a huge reduction in the amount of fish that are being caught because of the warmer temperatures, because they're all dying. And half of this is happened probably in most of our lifetimes, just in the past 20 years. So warm weather holds a lot more water vapor. You know that when you take a shower, you take a nice hot shower, you get out, there's water vapor in the air and it's on your mirror. By each 1 degree Celsius, the water vapor can increase by 7%. So this looks like a little old statistic, or this is again a global one. They said there's already 5% more water vapor in the oceans. Well, it should be above that now because we've already busted the 1.5%. So there's a lot more water vapor in the air than there was just 30 years ago. And when you get water vapor and it moves over land to rain, then what happens? You get record-breaking downfall because there's so much more fuel, there's so much more moisture in the air. It just comes down all at once, and that's not really beneficial when it just comes down all at once, right? And Virginia is in here. We're getting a 37% increase in the likelihood of very strong kind of sudden storms. So what do you think about hurricanes? How would this be impacting hurricanes? Stronger. So the answer is the number of hurricanes has not increased, but the intensity has absolutely increased, and how fast they spin up to a level 4 and a level 5 has absolutely increased. There's been a significant increase in the higher intensity of hurricanes at levels 4 and level 5. You got more moisture, you got heavier downpours. If you're near the coastline, you got more storm surge. And the jet stream, in a couple of charts, I'll show you about the jet stream, but it can hold that storm in place longer, more water, more storms, more flooding. And again, if you're near the coastline, you get more storm surge. Yeah. So some people ask, well, if we have more moisture in the air, that's better for land, right? Because we get more moisture. No, the answer is no. That same heat that is kind of drawing moisture out of the ocean does the same thing over land, especially in like the first 6 to 8 inches of your land, of your soil. That's where you want the moisture, right? But that same heat is drawing that moisture out of there, causing drought, causing the top layer of your ground to, to crackle and not to be very healthy. So it's the same kind of process. So it's causing more droughts because that heat is pulling up the moisture from your land, also with the ocean. So there's a definite increase in the number of both heavy downpours and then extreme droughts since just 2002. And I had a couple charts on fires, but I took most of them out except this one because I think we're all really depressed with seeing all the images of the fires from California. But yeah, as you can imagine, definite correlation, higher air temperatures, that creates more instability in the air, more lightning strikes, the foliage on the ground is dried out, so more fires.
I think we're seeing so much publicity right now simply because it's in domestic, built up residential, suburban and urban areas.
Right.
So that's a getting attention.
Right, right. But for native plant conferences, it destroying all the native plants and the animals. I saw some videos of all the deer and the birds and the raccoons. But it's devastating. So of course, with the warmer atmosphere, all of our ice, our large chunks of ice storage is melting. This is happening a lot faster than the scientists had predicted just 20 years ago. This is in Greenland. And then on the other side of the world, the Antarctic. Look at that. Again, just since the 1970s. So when all those huge ice formations start melting and it goes into the ocean, then what happens? There you go. Sea level rise. And Virginia is right in there. We have accelerating exponentially a sea level rise along our coastline. And this is really, for Virginia, it's really bad.
Subsidence, about 30% of the sea level rise in Virginia is subsidence. Part of it is the sea level rise that they're experiencing.
Right.
And the rest of it is the rebound from the hit in the Potomac. So that we're rising faster than anybody else. So that
you can read my chart. So this is Norfolk. So again, the topography and the history of Virginia, a lot of areas are really close to sea level. So when you have a sea level rise and then it rains, you're going to get flooding. You're going to get flooding.
People who live in area, their house is outside the main gate of the base.
Yeah.
The dates passed. You had to put your house up on 17 feet stilts, or it wasn't insurable.
Right.
They decided they'd owned the house long enough, they weren't doing it.
Yeah.
So you can't get house insurance.
So they predict 5 feet sea level rise by 2100. None of us will be here by then, but just think of that, the Virginia coastline, 5 feet sea level rise. It could, absolutely. Absolutely, you're right. And these are just, scientific predictions, but it's rapidly changing. So a little bit of audio from a newscast. Hurricane Helene last year.
Life-threatening situation.
So it quickly went to a category 4, like within a day. It was a tropical storm. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4. It was just, it just happened so quickly. And what was unique about this is it formed, hovered kind of over Florida, and then went straight up. I mean, normally they go out to the coastline, right? Just the weather patterns and formation, it went straight up to Asheville, North Carolina. And this is what happened in Asheville. I own a home close to here. I'll show you that in the next chart. So Asheville is kind of like in a bowl. It's the Appalachian Mountains on the side and other mountains. When all that rain, it was a tropical storm by the time it got there, but it had so much moisture, and then the air conditions, it had to kind of hover over Asheville for at least a day, day and a half. And Asheville is kind of known. You go for a lot of walks there in that whole area. They have beautiful little streams, little creeks, little waterfalls. When that much water comes down from all the surrounding mountains, those cute little creeks and waterfalls just turned into raging rivers, took out buildings and streets and bridges and homes. And it was just devastating.
1 cubic foot of water weighs 64 pounds.
Yeah. 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 So this area has had hurricanes before, but they usually come from the coast. I mean, Virginia, North Carolina, we get hurricanes rolling up the coast, and they usually come in and just blow off, and it's rain. This came from the Gulf of Mexico straight up, and then just hovered there for a while. So they have never had anything like this before. They're totally unprepared. It went straight up?
No.
No, really, they've had hurricanes. Absolutely. But they've had hurricanes come from the coastline. It has never come from, they said, this is what Megan and I have a house there. I live there, so I've talked to a lot of people. They've never had it come straight up from the Gulf of Mexico, and then just it was the hanging out for that whole day, day and a half, however long, and just poured rain. And then of course it all came down to Asheville. So here's my house. I live in I have a house in Sugar Mountain, North Carolina. It's 5,000 feet up, and we still had some significant damage to our house. On the left over there, you see some of the trees. It's not a great picture that far, but I had a huge 80-feet trees, and they just swirled and snapped and fell into the road. This is the road in front of my house. Initially, they were laying across the road, so nobody could get past my house. So the neighbors the next day, when they could, had to get up and chop up my trees and move them out of the house. This is the back of my house. A couple of trees hit the house. That one that's laying on the roof there, that was one of my favorite trees. It's a native cucumber magnolia, and they're only at 3,000 feet and higher. I know, and it was right off my deck. Dead now. So it was one of my, yeah, it was, yeah. And this is me. We waited a couple of weeks because the roads were washed out, and the local official said, if you don't have to come, please don't. So we waited like 3.5 weeks to go. We couldn't even, this is our driveway. We couldn't even get into the driveway. So we had to park out in the road, immediately get our chainsaws. We didn't even have a house yet. We had to chainsaw our way into the house. So I lost about half of the trees on my property. I only had like an acre, and they were all native trees. I didn't let anything be introduced that was not native. So these kind of storms and droughts and floods have a significant damage on our native trees, our native plants.
Was it mostly wind damage?
Yes, in my circumstances, most of them damage. We had some driving rain, but we didn't have any flooding. Yeah, the flooding was all Asheville. So this is a good chart to explain now and then why places like Texas and Louisiana get snow, get a kind of a cold snap for snow. So this is normal. This is just how our Earth works. It's just physics. We have a stable polar vortex hanging around the North Pole, and then we have that strong jet stream. It comes down, and it continues down towards the equator, but it gets weaker as it goes down. But it always, for America, always goes from west coast to east coast, and that's why it's always faster if you're flying from California to Virginia. It's half-hour faster unless you're flying from Virginia over to California, because you're going against the jet stream. But so this is a normal situation where it's nice and stable. Yeah, but when you get these warm air, I mean, the whole Earth is warming up, and warm waves kind of move around, right? So these warm air masses that kind of poke up into that jet stream, and even all the way up to the polar vortex, creates a waviness, right? That cold air has got to go somewhere, so it's poking up. It's not dissipating, so it's going to come down. It's in the United States. You can see it can poke all the way down into Texas and Louisiana. I mean, last month, Louisiana had a foot of snow on Bourbon Street. I mean, it never happens. This is why. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It's part. I mean, this is a chart from NOAA, so the airlines definitely know about it. Yeah. Again, I try to always use scientific data and NOAA, NASA, EPA charts. I follow Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson on Facebook, and he used the exact same chart, which is a great validation of my charts, to explain to his followers why this was happening. And he said, it's not because, don't think it's because we don't have climate change. It is because of climate change that this is happening. So just kind of a summary of all the weather extremes that have been happening It's 1980. And if your neighbor or your great uncle still doesn't believe in climate change, have them talk to somebody in the insurance company. They are paying out billions of dollars in insurance. And you've probably heard in people in high risk areas, like in Florida and California, they can't even get insurance. Insurance companies are private entities. They have no obligation to offer you insurance if they think they're going to lose money in the long run. And then that's where sometimes the government has to step in and offer some basic insurance, but that's our money. We're paying for that. I mean, that's taxpayer dollars. And the same thing if you have a regular private insurance company, they're raising their rates because of these unexpected things. I mean, who would have thought a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico is going to go up and land over Asheville? I mean, they're paying out millions. So they're going to raise rates for everybody. So we are all paying for this. All right, so let's move into climate change impacts the pollinators, which impacts our native plants. And I'm glad that you all heard the keynote speaker this morning. He mentioned this also. We're going to an extinction biodiversity crisis. A lot of it is because of habitat loss, but that is also related to climate change. Fires, floods, the heat, so it's a habitat loss. But it's also just human beings expanding. I mean, going, burning down forests, clearing land for more human activity. So, but our animals have nowhere to go and no food to eat. We're at risk of losing out. He used that exact same number this morning in the keynote example. Keynote speech he gave, 50% of our land-based species. This includes birds. So birds, bees, bats, butterflies, everything. We're at extreme risk of losing half of our pollinators and just the land-based species. And I sold this from Facebook also. This is a quote attributed to Paul Harvey. I don't know if he really said it. A lot of quippy things are attributed to Paul Harvey. I don't know. But it's true. Despite our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. And it is a house of cards. And again, he mentioned this in the keynote address. We've got to care about all the things, all the critters, all the worms and the caterpillars and the insects that make up our whole biodiversity, or we're all just doomed. We can't just keep paving over everything. In one healthy spoonful of soil, there's billions of little microorganisms and animals, but healthy bacteria, filaments, fungi, but that creates a whole foundation of the plants need that. That's how they get their nutrients. We eat the plants or we feed it to animals that we eat. That's the whole foundation of our whole biodiversity and a whole house of cards. If that fails, we all fail. So 88% of flowering plants need pollinators and over 35%. I think Doug Tellamy said 50%, but the quote I had was 35%. A lot of our crops need pollinators, obviously. And timing is everything. And this is a lot of mismatches can happen. So climate change is impacting different countries different ways and even different states different ways. So a lot of our pollinators, some of them migrate from down the south, right? Either Mexico or from birds, either South America. If it gets hotter there and it's kind of like a false spring, well, it's time to move, right? They start moving. When they get up here to Virginia, well, maybe our plants haven't opened up yet, then they have no food. So they either keep going or they perish. Another scenario is some of them hibernate here in place in the ground or in leaf litter or in stems. Again, if we get a false spring and we think, oh, it's time to come out, but our plants aren't ready yet, again, they have no food. They're going to perish. And then a third scenario is if the plants themselves saying, oh, it's time, we're out and we're going to bloom, we're going to put out our flowers, and then the pollinators aren't here yet. So it's just creating such mismatch in all of our pollinators. So again, it's really a habitat loss and a habitat and food source as they migrate and try to help us pollinate our plants. And just to bring it to Virginia, we have over 450 species of native bees. A lot of them are very local to certain areas in Virginia. And Virginia had the first bumblebee that was listed as a federally endangered species, the rusty patch bumblebee. And again, I think this is primarily habitat loss, but again, habitat loss is related to climate change. And then there's been a lot of development in Virginia in the past, 50 years. And when developers go in and they clear acres and acres of land, either for a housing development or for, industry, any plants they put back are the cheapest foreign plants they can find. They don't put native plants back, but so that's why it's really important to come to symposiums like this so you can talk to your neighbors and your communities. We've got to put native plants back in our yards try to help feed our bumblebees or any kind of bees, any pollinators. All right, moving on to how climate change impacts the native plants. So weather certainly impacts our native plants, pollinators, and so this part is just how the environment of climate change itself is impacting our native plants. So our trees. So some trees are losing suitable habitat and some trees are gaining suitable habitat. The ones that are losing are the ones that tend to be a little further, that started out further north or also native to further north, and they need that really cold time period it's just part of their plant profile. That's what they need to be successful. The ones that are gaining suitable habitat are the ones that kind of are migrating up from the south, Southern Virginia, or even the Piedmont of North Carolina. So you can just kind of tell on this list. So the plants that are already here, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. It's going to take years for them to become a problem. They may be a little more stressed, but you won't notice. But if you're planning on planting new trees or reforesting an area or something, I would certainly pick from the list that are gaining suitable habitat, just so they last the next 20 to 50 years, because we don't know what's going to happen. It's going to keep changing, so they can grow up, right? So they can grow up. Kind of a nice note at the bottom. I'm a master gardener, and people always ask us, when's the best time to plant Virginia native trees and bushes? And we always say sun, right, Leslie? It would say September, October, November, sun. It's a great acronym for us to remember. Well, Fairfax has officially told all their county employees, do not plant any trees in September. It's just too hot, because they just have to go out and hand water after that. So now, Master Gardeners Harriet and Harriet, we're going to have to tell people, October, November. I can't imagine telling anybody to plant a tree in December, but maybe that's where we're going. Really? Yeah, that just doesn't sound right, right?
They did with the Department of Forestry this year.
Yeah.
They came and helped plant the buffer along my creek with 350 trees. We did it 2 days before I left to visit my in-laws for Christmas.
No way, in December.
Yeah, the Saturday before Christmas.
It just doesn't sound right, planting trees for the, I know. Yeah, but yeah, well, that's just right. If the ground's not frozen, I guess it's okay. Usually, yeah. So this is another proof that our climate and our environment is changing. We're getting an earlier spring. So we've all seen this. Our nice native spring ephemerals come out because like a false spring comes out earlier, and then what? And then the real spring comes back, or the real winter comes back. Is that right? So since these plants are native, this won't kill them, it won't die, but it zaps some of their energy, right? So then the flowers won't be as vibrant, or they won't last as long. And our spring ephemerals, they don't last that long anyway, so it's going to be even shorter time period when they're going to be out. So they'll be back, but again, it's just a little more stressful for them to come out and you get ready to be pollinated, and then the snow and the cold weather comes back. And there's nobody to pollinate them. The government has documented a 3-week earlier spring when things start to come out, like lilacs and all the early spring, the ones that leaf out in the spring. So spring is coming 3 weeks earlier. Impacts of a hotter summer. Definitely our temperatures in the summer have been increasing. I think we've all seen trees like this. I've had a few in my yard. If they're native and they've been there for a long time, they'll probably survive. They won't look pretty, but they'll probably survive. Again, they're kind of used to droughts, but it's increasing. That just creates more stress on our trees. And then our flowers, I mean, once they get crispy like that, they're kind of done for the season, but this is impacts that we're having. I did want that's right. Leave the seeds for our whatever birds we have left, our pollinators. At the top, I was kind of surprised at this. So across all 50 states, Virginia is number 8 in the one that is increasing in becoming hotter. The number 8 in the states are becoming the hottest. Within Virginia, our state capital, Richmond, 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit hotter, and then Roanoke at 4.6. Is that right? So these are summertime temperature, in the middle of summer. Yeah. And it's more vegetable related. If you plant, a lot of us I know plant vegetable gardens in the summer. If it just gets too hot, the fruit gets too stressed to set fruit. Bolting, I had a big problem with this last year with my lettuce and my basil. Kept wanting to bolt. Yeah, a lot of people, and just having to go out and cut it so it wouldn't get bitter and go to seed. And then sun scald, some of our thinner skin fruits, like some of the tomato varieties and eggplant, they can get sun skull with the really hot summers. Documented from a chart from NOAA, we are in the increased drought area, increased temperatures and increased drought. Virginia is not as bad as some of the other areas, but we're certainly in there. So moving into fall. So again, more documentation. Fall is slipping out to the right. So spring is starting 3 weeks earlier. Fall is slipping out 3 weeks. So some people say, hey, I have a longer growing season, which is great. I mean, I had tomatoes until November last year, which was crazy. I'm usually happy if I can keep tomatoes until Halloween. Last year I had them until mid-November. So some few benefits of that. But if you like, you own a winery or you like to enjoy wine, that's not good for our grapes. They need that first frost, usually at the end of September and October. Well, I guess it's been more October in our area, September up in Maryland. But they need that to set the fruit, and that's when they start harvesting. So it's moving out. So, and also reduces our brilliant fall foliage. You stand, the Skyline Drive, normally it's just beautiful. Well, fall moves out. Well, those are deciduous trees. They're done. They're just going to drop their leaves, right? And so you don't get to see that beautiful display. They're just going to drop them. Winters, we're getting 6 more days of frost-free in our area. So winters, the bottom average temperature is coming up, and the less days that we have for cold days. So I didn't want this to be all negative. Some positive impacts to the climate change in Virginia. As I mentioned earlier, longer frost-free periods. You have longer, if you're a vegetable grower, you got a longer time. For some of our vegetables continue to produce all summer. You have a longer time period to do that. More freeze-thaw cycles. That actual freeze-thaw cycle actually is good, kind of good for the soil, kind of like a gentle kind of massage, break some things up. More summer precipitation. There is more rain. Hopefully it doesn't all come down at once, but you should maybe be able to reduce the amount of watering you have to do to your plants, so it's reduced plant stress. Higher dew points, again, less moisture stress. Diffuse light, more storms coming in, so it's not as bright and shiny all the time. Again, reduced plant stress. Increased atmospheric carbon dioxide. Some people say, hey, plants need carbon dioxide. It's a good thing, right? There's a tipping point when we have enough. So, but there are some countries, like countries around the equator, that have documented some of their plants are growing faster because of the increased carbon dioxide. So I guess in some places, that's a good thing. And then new plants. So as I mentioned way up on chart 3, we're moving into 7B if we're not there already. So I would start looking into plants that are native to 7B and different varieties of vegetables that are survive in 7B in Southern Virginia, or maybe even trees.
Instead of having high in zone 7, the low in 7. You know what, like it'll say it's like we tell people not to do spruce anymore. It's just too hot.
Too hot, yeah.
But 30 years ago, they were fine.
Right, right. So experiment with things that are native in different areas or close around us. So that's a good thing. Maybe some new varieties in your yard that you haven't had before. And then negative impacts. I tried to make the list the same, but this is a little bit longer. More spring precipitation. So, and unfortunately, it kind of all comes at once. So it's hard to plant things in the spring when you're just getting these heavy rains. You plan a weekend to plant things, and it's raining all weekend. You may have to plant things for shorter seasons, so you can get that spring break and then move into something different from the summer. Higher humidity, which increases the bacteria and fungal diseases sometimes. Higher nighttime temperatures, which is a little stressful for your plants. Yeah.
And many native plant seeds require specification.
Yes.
Should I rely on my refrigerator for that?
The cold is about refrigerated for cold
I think we're
stratification.
still okay. I mean, it probably changes per variety, depending on what you're growing. Do we need to repeat the question?
Oh no.
Yeah, you're good. Okay. Are you whispering in there? I mean, try it. I mean, I would try. I know a lot of people do put like some bulbs in the refrigerator because they don't feel they get enough outside already. So again, I would just play with it, try it. Yeah, you look at the plant profile and the history of that plant and see what it needs. Like some of those trees that are moving out of our region, they need prolonged cold periods. But in the next 10, 15 years, they may not have it. So I would try it with your seeds. More heavy rains, again, it can wash away your soil and nutrients. More droughts, of course, it's a stress. And you may need irrigation. I had to break down and buy a system to sprinkle my vegetables in the summer because I was just spending too much time out there last summer hand watering. I just can't do it. So I hated to do that, but I had to just so I could get some vegetables last summer. So we all may need that, but you also need good drainage because when it rains, as we know in the spring now, it rains. So you need good drainage. More vigorous weed growth, a bad thing. So more weed management. And unfortunately, a lot of the invasive weeds really like hot, humid summers. And so you're going to have probably more weeds and have to be more diligent. Pollinators, we already talked about. They're certainly decreasing. New weeds, do the range expanding. Pests, yeah. Right. And I've heard I haven't seen a lot of scientific studies, but they say ticks, that they're not dying enough. That's what I hear. I don't know if I've seen in a lot of scientific studies to put that in a chart, but that's what people are talking about. They think they're not dying enough. They don't get enough cold. Is that right? Yeah. So the studies are probably coming, huh? You haven't seen ticks in a couple of years? Oh, a lot of people. Wow.
Come out of the woods, be coated.
You must
in the last couple of years.
You must have some like raccoons or something in your area that are eating, or the possums that are eating them. That's unusual. Most people I talk to say they've seen more. Yeah. And then unpredictable weather patterns. Again, it just makes it hard. I think I missed a quote in one of the earlier charts, but they said we're like the first generation of gardeners that really can't rely on historical records about what to plant, when's going to be your last frost, when's going to be the first frost, what survives in your area. So we just have to do more experimentation. Or unfortunately, we can't rely on our grandparents or our parents' records of this is when I planted this and this worked. That we'll have to experiment ourselves. Huh? I know the farmer's almanac is probably reducing in importance now because they do a historical, they depend on historical knowledge. Is that relevant anymore? I don't know. So some strategies. Again, plant selection. I would look to 7B, maybe bring some cool things into your yard that you haven't had before. Experiment with new species and varieties. Earlier planting dates, but then be prepared from some heavy rains possibly. More vigilant weed and pest monitoring, improve water management. We talked about both planning for drought and planning for floods. Frost and freeze protection. I had to use this week. I mean, because last week it was 40-something degrees, so I took my frost cloth off my winter vegetables, and then we're getting a freezing rain, so I had to go out and put them all back. So, and then modify pruning and pruning timing severity. We used to have a pretty good time period. We tell people to prune at like the end of winter. Well, now end of the winter season is shrinking, right? So now it's probably end of February, March, or we tell you look at, if you have plants, look at their plant profile and see when they want to be pruned. But most like to be pruned, most trees and bushes in this late winter, moving into spring. So that time period is kind of shifting around now. So I would say late February into March, mid-March now. So my experiments. So again, I wanted your examples, and we got a little bit of time. So again, I live in Virginia, but I have a house in North Carolina, which is zone 6A, and it's on a mountain. It's 5,000 feet up. But we didn't have a lot in our yard. So all these were free to me. I took them from my house in Virginia, potted them up, and I'm got a 50% success rate because this is a big difference. Especially, I think it's the altitude and the winds that I get on top of a mountain. Goldenrod, this is a second year, and it grew to like 5 feet. I was so happy. It was so beautiful. It is native in North Carolina, but I didn't see any in my neighborhood. So I think because of the fact that I'm on the top of a mountain, it was kind of difficult. I planted it on a slope so it doesn't get those winds. Mountain mint, you would think it'd be native in the Appalachians, and it is. But again, didn't see it in my neighborhood, and I got it to grow in my yard. American holly, these things grow so slow. They grow slow here in Virginia. They grow painfully slow in North Carolina, like an inch a year maybe, but they're still alive. So I'm really happy about that. And again, it's like a 50% success rate, but again, they're all free to me. So I got a couple of those still alive. Eastern red cedar, I mean, that's like 2 feet tall. And again, 50% success rate, but a couple of them are really growing. And there's none on the mountain that I know of. And this is going to be my pride and joy. And I know Southern Magnolia is not native to Virginia, more Georgia, North Carolina, or Southern North Carolina. but they grow well here, right? I have 9 in my yard in Virginia. Now and then I get a volunteer. So this one I took, and it's still alive. It's hardly growing, like again, half an inch a year. But if I can get a southern magnolia to grow on the mountain, Sugar Mountain, North Carolina, I'll be the queen of the mountain. So I'm very happy about that. And I baby it a lot. I got a cage around it. I go put lots of mulch around it. I give it organic fertilizer every time I'm there. So these are just, again, but I would encourage y'all to just now play. I mean, your climate is changing. All the warmer summers, earlier spring. So try some things that are you thought were out of your region, and just try them. Last slide, some references. Here's a book. I wrote 2 books. The first one, Backyard Gardener's Quest to Combat Climate Chaos, has a lot of the information I shared today about the climate and things that we as gardeners can do. More information than, of course, than what I shared today. Some about compost and ground covers, those kind of things, and some other things also. Lead Like a Master Gardener, that was a pandemic project. I kind of always wanted to write a book, and then I had some free time, so that was my first book. And then websites. Again, I'm a master gardener, so you can go to that website, ask questions, take pictures. We'll always answer you. Department of Conservation and Recreation, they have a great native plant list. Audubon, I'm an Audubon at Home ambassador, which we changed our name now. It's called Northern Virginia Birds or something like that. But anyway, they have a great color brochure, free color brochure that you can download that has all the native plants and what they like, their light and their water and whatever else. Of course, the Virginia Native Plant Society, they were here, and the Climate Reality Project. Some of the charts that I showed about from NASA and NOAA, you can go to that website, you can get it for free, and all their charts at the very bottom in the notes, they have the references. So if you want to do your own research, go there and look, see where they got that information.